The Galaxy Takes Notice Ambassador Minho Lee walked through the corridors of Axiom Prime once more, but this time was different. Before, aliens had looked at him with indifference or contempt. Now they watched him with careful attention. Some even stepped aside as he passed. Fear and respect looked remarkably similar, he thought. He was returning to address the Galactic Council, but he wasn't alone this time. 3 species had sent representatives to walk with him. The Talvarians, who had always been sympathetic. The Korath, a trading species that had suffered under Vrellan taxation. And the Milani, small beings who had watched the human strikes with great interest. The Milani ambassador, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish with dozens of eye stalks, drifted beside Minho. "Your people fight unlike anyone we have seen," it said through its translator. "The Vrellan have terrorized the galaxy for centuries. You have done in 3 weeks what no one else dared attempt." "We did what was necessary," Minho replied. "They gave us no choice, perhaps. But now the galaxy watches to see what you will do next. Will you be liberators, or will you become what you fought against?" It was a good question. One that kept Minho awake at night. The council chamber was packed. Every species had sent representatives. No one wanted to miss this session. The Vrellan delegation sat in their high seats, their red eyes burning with barely contained rage. Minho took his position at the center platform. He had prepared a speech, something diplomatic and measured, but as he looked up at the faces staring down at him, he decided to speak from his heart instead. 3 weeks ago, I stood here and asked for justice. I asked for protection under galactic law. I was told that the strong decide what is theirs and the weak suffer. I was told this was the way of the galaxy. His voice echoed through the chamber. So we decided to become strong. We showed the Vrellan that humans are not weak. We showed them that we do not accept their tyranny. And now I stand before you again, not to ask for justice, but to offer it. The council members leaned forward. How many of you live in fear of the Vrellan? How many of you pay tribute to avoid their wrath? How many of you have watched your colonies burned? Your people enslaved and said nothing because you were afraid? Silence. But Minho could see the truth in their faces. The Vrellan's empire was built on terror and everyone knew it. Earth offers an alternative. Join us, stand with us. Together, we can end the Vrellan's reign of terror. Together we can build a galaxy where justice actually means something. The Vrellan representative stood, his massive frame radiating anger. "You dare speak of justice? You attacked our facilities without provocation." Minho turned to face him. "You destroyed Mars without provocation. 15,000 civilians. You set the rules, Vrellan. We are simply playing by them." On Earth, Hyejin Nam watched the council session broadcast and smiled. She was a diplomatic strategist, specializing in psychological warfare and propaganda. For the past week, she had been orchestrating a campaign across the galaxy. Videos of the Vrellan attack on Mars. Testimonials from species that had suffered under Vrellan rule. Analysis of how the Vrellan maintained their empire through fear. All of it carefully edited, carefully timed, carefully distributed through channels that reached billions of beings across thousands of worlds. "The narrative is shifting," she told her team. "Humanity is no longer the victim. We're the resistance. We're the liberators. Every species that has suffered under the Vrellan is looking at us and thinking, if the humans can fight back, maybe we can too." Her assistant pulled up poll data from across the galaxy. Support for the Vrellan has dropped 20% in the last week. 3 of their client species are openly questioning their tribute payments. The Korath Trade Federation is discussing sanctions. Good, keep the pressure on. I want every species to understand that the old order is dying. The Vrellan's time is over. But the Vrellan were not accepting defeat quietly. In a fortress system called the Crimson Nebula, they were gathering their strength. 1,000 warships, the largest fleet they had assembled in a century. Their plan was simple: destroy Earth's forces in a single overwhelming strike, then proceed to Earth itself and reduce it to rubble. Commander Borajin sat in Earth's intelligence headquarters, analyzing Vrellan communications. She was a naval intelligence officer with a gift for pattern recognition. For days she had been tracking Vrellan fleet movements, intercepting messages, piecing together their strategy. "They're planning something big," she told Admiral Taeyang during a secure briefing. "Look at these movement patterns. Ships pulling back from frontier positions. Supply convoys all heading to the same sector." Taeyang studied the displays. "Where?" "Crimson Nebula. It's a perfect staging ground. Dense gas clouds interfere with sensors. Easy to hide a fleet there. And look at the timing. They're all converging in 3 days. How many ships? Bora took a breath. Best estimate, 1,000. Maybe more. Every major warship they can spare. The room went silent. Earth's entire fleet numbered less than 50 ships. Even with their technological advantages, those odds were impossible. They're going to hit us with everything they have, Taiyang said quietly. They want to end this war in one battle. We could avoid them, one officer suggested. Stay mobile, hit their supply lines, avoid direct confrontation. No, Hyunwoo said. He had been standing quietly in the corner. If we run, they'll pursue us to Earth. If we try to fight them piece by piece, they'll hunt us down. We need to face them. But on our terms, Taeyang looked at him. What do you have in mind? A trap. We know where they're gathering. We know when they plan to move. So we let them think they've surprised us. We appear in the Crimson Nebula like we're scouting. We let them spring their ambush, and then we spring ours. Dr. Jiwon was brought into the planning. Can we make the Crimson Nebula itself into a weapon? Hyunwoo asked her. She thought for a moment, her mind racing through possibilities. The gas clouds, yes, we could. If we deployed quantum resonators throughout the nebula, we could create a feedback loop. The gas itself would become charged with energy. And then we could ignite it, Taeyang finished. Turn the entire nebula into a weapon. It would take days to deploy enough resonators, Jiwon warned. And we'd need to do it without the Vrelin noticing. Then we'd better start now, Hyunwoo said. 3 days later, the trap was set. Hidden throughout the Crimson Nebula, 200 quantum resonators waited silently. The human fleet, all 48 ships, positioned themselves at the edge of the nebula, seemingly unaware of the massive Vrelin fleet hiding in the gas clouds. Commander Bora had been right. 1,000 Vrelin warships waited in ambush positions, their crews eager for revenge. Their commanders were confident. The humans had surprised them before, but not this time. This time, the Vrelin would show their true power. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching his sensors. He could see the Vrelin ships hidden in the nebula, their power signatures masked but not invisible to Earth's advanced sensors. All ships report ready, his tactical officer said. Then let's begin, Hyunwoo replied. Take us into the nebula. Make it look like we're scanning for something. The human fleet moved forward, entering the gas clouds. They moved slowly, carefully, like prey walking into a trap. The Vrelin waited until the humans were deep in the nebula, surrounded on all sides. Then they struck. 1,000 warships appeared from the gas clouds simultaneously, weapons blazing. The trap was sprung. The humans were surrounded, and then Hyunwoo smiled. Dr. Jiwon, activate the resonators. Throughout the nebula, 200 devices activated at once. The gas clouds began to glow. Energy built up, feeding on itself, growing exponentially. The Vrelin realized too late what was happening. All ships, displacement jump. Pattern delta. The human fleet vanished, appearing at the outer edge of the nebula, safe from what was about to happen. The Crimson Nebula exploded. It wasn't a normal explosion. The quantum resonators had turned the entire cloud of gas into a massive energy reaction. Lightning arced between ships. The gas itself ignited. The Vrelin fleet, trapped in the center, had nowhere to run. Ships burned. Shields failed. Hulls melted. The Vrelin's mighty fleet died screaming. When it was over, 600 Vrelin warships were destroyed. 200 more were crippled beyond repair. Only 200 managed to escape, and those were damaged and running for their lives. The human fleet had lost 3 ships, caught too close to the initial explosion. 150 lives, but they had broken the Vrelin's military power in a single stroke. Ambassador Minho watched the battle reports from Axiom Prime. Around him, council members sat in stunned silence. The Vrelin representative had gone pale, his red eyes dimmed with shock. I believe, Minho said quietly, that Earth has proven its right to exist. Now let us discuss the terms of the Vrelin's surrender. On Vrelin Prime, the Emperor received the news of the disaster in the Crimson Nebula, his greatest fleet destroyed, his empire suddenly vulnerable. And worst of all, 3 of his client species had already announced they would no longer pay tribute. The Emperor understood. The humans had not just defeated his military. They had defeated the idea that the Vrelin were invincible, and without that fear his empire would crumble. He had one choice left. The morning in the plan Earth mourned like it had never mourned before. Every nation, every city, every small town held vigils for the 15,000 lives lost on Mars. In Seoul, millions gathered in silence, holding candles that turned the night into a sea of flickering light. In New York, the streets filled with people who had no words, only tears. Even in the smallest villages, families who had never known anyone on Mars wept for their loss. The world had united in ways it never had before. Old conflicts seemed meaningless now. Political differences faded. Humanity had been attacked, and every human felt that wound. Admiral Taeyang stood in the command center beneath Seoul, watching news feeds from around the world. He was a career military man, 60 years old with scars from a dozen conflicts before first contact. His gray hair was cut short, and his face showed the weight of his new responsibility. The world leaders had unanimously appointed him supreme commander of all human military forces. The Vrellan's deadline arrives in 25 days, his aide said quietly. They're expecting our surrender. Taeyang turned from the screens. They'll get an answer, just not the one they expect. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in a facility so secret that most government officials didn't know it existed, Dr. Ji-Won Han worked through the night. She had barely slept since Mars. Her eyes were red. Her hands shook from too much coffee, but she couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. The laboratory around her was filled with equipment that would have seemed like magic a decade ago. Quantum computers hummed. Holographic displays showed equations that bent the rules of physics, and at the center of it all was Project Recursion. We're ready for the test, her assistant said nervously. Are you sure about this? The simulation suggests the energy requirements are... I know what the simulations say, Ji-Won interrupted. Run the test. They activated the prototype. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to twist. A small sphere of metal that had been sitting on the test platform simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not vaporized. It was removed from space-time entirely, along with everything in a 3-meter radius. It works, Ji-Won whispered. Then louder, it works. The weapon would need to be scaled up, refined, made reliable enough for combat. But the principle was proven. Humanity now had the power to tear holes in reality. Itself, Colonel Suman Kang stood before 500 of Earth's best soldiers in a training facility in the mountains of Tibet. They were special forces from every nation, the best of the best, now unified under a single command. They looked at her with hard eyes, ready for orders. Suman was smaller than most of her soldiers, but her presence filled the room. She had been a special operations commander for 15 years. Had led missions that officially never happened. Her face was scarred from a mission in the Arctic that had gone wrong, but she had completed the objective anyway. The Vrellan think we're weak, she told her soldiers. They think we're prey. They've never faced an enemy that fights like we do. They rely on superior technology and brute force. They've never had to face opponents who are desperate, creative, and angry. She activated a holographic display showing Vrellan military positions throughout their empire. Red dots marked fortresses, supply lines, command centers. We can't match them ship for ship. We can't match them in a straight fight. So we won't fight them straight. We'll hit them where they're weak. We'll make them afraid to sleep. We'll teach them that attacking Earth was the biggest mistake they ever made. The soldiers responded with a roar that shook the walls. In a nondescript office building in Singapore, Daehyun Oh sifted through intelligence reports. He was the head of Earth's intelligence network, a man who had spent 30 years in the shadows watching, listening, learning. His face was forgettable on purpose. He was the kind of person you could pass on the street and never remember. But his mind was sharp as a blade, and right now, it was focused entirely on the Vrellan Empire. Their military is spread thin, he told Admiral Taeyang during a secure video conference. They control 200 worlds, but they do it through intimidation, not occupation. Most of their territory is barely defended. They've never needed serious defenses because no one has ever challenged them. Weak points? Taeyang asked. Daehyun displayed a star map. 27 systems are critical to their supply lines. 15 worlds house their administrative centers. 3 stations serve as their main military academies. And here, he zoomed in on a single system. This is Vrellan Prime, their homeworld. Only moderately defended because they think no one would dare attack it. Taeyang studied the map. If we hit their supply lines, their empire will start to fracture. Exactly. The Vrellan rule through fear, show that they can be hurt, and their subjects will start asking questions, show that they can be beaten, and their empire will tear itself apart. Back in Seoul, Admiral Taeyang called a meeting of the War Council. Captain Hyun-woo was there, along with Dr. Ji-won, Colonel Soman Dae-hyun, and representatives from every major nation. The room was tense with anticipation. "We have 23 days until the Vrelin deadline," Taeyang began. "They expect us to surrender. Instead, we're going to do something they never anticipated. We're going to attack." He activated the display showing Dae-hyun's intelligence. "The Vrelin Empire is vast but brittle. We'll launch simultaneous strikes on 12 of their forward outposts. We'll destroy their supply depots. We'll cut their supply lines. And we'll do it all before they know what hit them." Captain Hyun-woo leaned forward. "What about their fleet?" "They have thousands of warships," Dr. Ji-won stood up. "That's where Project Recursion comes in. We've built 12 ships equipped with quantum displacement drives. They can appear anywhere in a star system instantly. No warning, no defense. We hit them and vanish before they can respond. Our ground forces will follow up," Colonel Soman added. "Once the orbital defenses are down, we insert teams to capture intelligence, sabotage facilities, and disappear. We'll be ghosts." One of the council members, an older diplomat, looked troubled. "This is a massive escalation. If we fail, the Vrelin will destroy Earth itself." Admiral Taeyang met his eyes. "If we do nothing, Earth dies slowly under their boot. At least this way, we die fighting. But I don't plan to die. I plan to win." "How can we possibly win?" another member asked. "They're one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy." "Because they're arrogant," Dae-hyun said quietly. "Because they think we're nothing. Because they've never faced an enemy that fights like humans fight. We don't follow their rules. We don't fight their way. We fight to win by any means necessary." Captain Hyun-woo stood. "I volunteer to command the retribution. I want to be on the front line." Taeyang nodded. "Granted. You'll lead the strike on the Vrelin fortress at Karak 9. It's their primary military academy. Destroying it will hurt their ability to train new officers for years. Over the next 20 days, Earth prepared for war in secret. Shipyards worked around the clock building the new warships. Soldiers trained in conditions that pushed them to their limits and beyond. Scientists refined weapons that would have been considered impossible just months ago. The Vrelin sent occasional messages, taunting humanity, demanding a response to their ultimatum. Each message went unanswered. With 2 days left before the deadline, Admiral Taeyang recorded a message. It would be broadcast on every channel, sent to every council member, delivered to the Vrelin Empire itself. He sat in his uniform, his face calm but his eyes burning with cold fury. "To the Vrelin Empire and to the Galactic Council, you attacked our colony. You murdered 15,000 innocent people. You offered us a choice between submission and death. You believed we would choose submission because you thought we were weak. You were wrong." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We are not weak. We are not prey. We are humans, and you have made a mistake that will echo through galactic history. You wanted an answer to your ultimatum. Here it is, we choose war. And when this is over, you will remember the name Earth. You will teach your children about what happens when you provoke humanity. The galaxy ignored our pain. Now the galaxy will witness your fall." The message ended. Captain Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Retribution, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Around him, 11 other ships were ready. Below, transport ships carrying Colonel Soman's soldiers waited for the signal. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. Hyun-woo thought of his wife, his daughter, the life they would never have. He thought of the 15,000 voices that would never speak again. He thought of the Vrelin representatives' contemptuous laughter in the council chamber. "Then let's teach them what happens when you make humans angry," he said. "All ships engage quantum drives. It's time to remind the galaxy that Earth does not forgive, and Earth does not forget." The first blood, the Vrelin fortress at Karak 9, floated in the darkness of space, a massive construct of metal and stone that had stood for 300 years. Inside, young Vrelin officers trained in the arts of warfare, learning the tactics that had built their empire. They believed themselves invincible. They believed no one would dare challenge them. They were wrong. Captain Hyun-woo sat in the command chair of the Retribution, watching the countdown on his display. Around his ship, hidden by quantum stealth fields that bent light itself, 11 other human warships waited in perfect formation. They had traveled through folded space, appearing in the Karak 9 system without warning, without detection. 30 seconds, his tactical officer announced. Yun-Woo felt his heartbeat steady. This was for his wife, for his daughter, for Mars, for every human who had been told they didn't matter. All weapons charged. Quantum displacement drives ready. Ground team standing by. 10 seconds. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of systems. Every officer knew their role. They had practiced this 1,000 times in simulation. Now it was real. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 mark. Reality twisted. Space folded in on itself. The Retribution and its sister ships appeared directly above the Vrellan fortress, so close that their shadows fell across its surface. The Vrellan had no time to react. Yun-Woo's voice was cold and calm. Fire everything. The Retribution unleashed hell. Energy weapons that used quantum entanglement struck with perfect accuracy. Missiles equipped with Dr. Jiwan's reality warping technology punched through shields that should have been impenetrable. Kinetic slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed tore through armor like paper. The fortress's shields lasted 3 seconds. Its armor lasted another 5. Then the exterior began to break apart, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. Displacement jump. Position 2. The Retribution vanished and reappeared on the opposite side of the fortress. The Vrellan defenders were still trying to track where the first attack had come from when the second barrage hit. Defense platforms exploded. Docking bays ruptured. The fortress was coming apart. Lieutenant Yunbi led her fighter squadron through the chaos. She was 24 years old, the youngest ace pilot in Earth's forces with reflexes that bordered on precognitive. Her squadron of 30 fighters wove through the debris, targeting the Vrellan ships that were trying to scramble from the fortress. Red Squadron, break left. Take out those frigates. Blue Squadron, with me. We're going after that cruiser. Her fighter was small, fast, built for maneuverability over raw power. The Vrellan ships were larger, better armed, but they were slow and predictable. Yunbi watched their movements, saw the patterns, understood their tactics in seconds. She rolled her fighter, dodged a plasma burst that should have vaporized her, and fired a missile at point-blank range into the cruiser's engine core. The explosion lit up the darkness. Cruiser down. All squadrons keep them busy. Don't let anyone escape to warn the others. On the fortress itself, Colonel Soman's transport ships breached the hull. The doors opened, and 200 soldiers poured into the corridors. They moved with brutal efficiency, clearing rooms, securing objectives, showing no mercy. Soman led the assault personally. She carried a rifle modified with human and alien technology, firing rounds that could punch through Vrellan armor. Behind her, combat engineer Jae-yoon deployed drones that mapped the fortress interior and identified key systems. Engineering is 2 levels down, Jay reported, checking his tactical display. I can overload their reactor from there. Do it, Samin ordered. Everyone else, grab what intel you can and prepare for extraction. The Vrellan defenders were unprepared for humans. They had fought many species, but never one that moved like this, fought like this. Humans didn't follow the standard galactic rules of warfare. They used cover, surprise, and fear as weapons. A group of Vrellan cadets barely trained found themselves facing Soman's squad. They raised their weapons expecting a traditional engagement. Instead, they got flashbangs, smoke grenades, and humans emerging from the chaos like demons. The fight lasted 10 seconds. Jay reached the engineering section and set to work. His fingers flew across the Vrellan controls, hacking systems that had never been designed with security in mind because no one had ever dared attack a Vrellan fortress before. Reactor overload in 5 minutes, he announced. We need to move. Across the galaxy, 11 other human strike teams were having similar success. The Vrellan outpost at Morvan 4 simply ceased to exist when 3 human warships appeared in its midst and unleashed coordinated fire. The supply depot at Hexar Prime was captured intact by Colonel Samin's sister teams, who now had access to months of Vrellan military supplies. The fortress at Karak 9 was dying. Fires raged through its corridors. Its orbit was decaying. The reactor countdown ticked toward 0. All teams extraction now, Somin ordered. Her soldiers fell back to the transport ships with disciplined precision, carrying captured data cores and equipment. Captain Hyun-woo watched the extraction from the Retribution's bridge. Lieutenant Yunbi, cover the transports. All capital ships prepare for displacement jump. The transport ships cleared the fortress. The fighter squadrons formed up around them, and with seconds to spare, the human fleet vanished. Behind them, the Carrack 9 Fortress reactor went critical. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. Admiral Taeyang watched the reports come in from his command center on Earth. All 12 strikes had been successful. 3 fortresses destroyed, 5 outposts captured, 2 supply depots taken, 4 Vrellan military vessels destroyed for every human ship damaged. The cost had not been bloodless. The strike on Hexar Prime had lost a transport ship to defensive fire. 40 soldiers dead, but compared to the devastation they had inflicted on the Vrellan, it was a miracle. Send the reports to all news networks, Taeyang ordered. I want the whole galaxy to see what happened today. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. The primitive humans had struck the mighty Vrellan Empire and hurt them badly. Video footage showed human warships appearing from nowhere, tearing through Vrellan defenses and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The galactic community reacted with shock. On Axiom Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Vrellan representative was screaming for action, demanding that the Council condemn humanity's aggression. But something had changed. The species that had remained silent when Mars burned were now paying attention. Some looked at the humans with new respect, others with fear. But no one was calling them weak anymore. The Vrellan Empire's High Command met in their war room on Vrellan Prime. The loss of Carrack 9 was a humiliation. Carrack 9 had stood for 3 centuries. It had been a symbol of Vrellan power. How is this possible? The Supreme War Leader demanded. How did they appear without warning? How did they penetrate our shields? No one had answers. The technology the humans had displayed was beyond anything the Vrellan had seen. The quantum displacement drives, the shield-piercing weapons, the coordinated precision of their attacks. We underestimated them, one general admitted quietly. Then we will not make that mistake again, the war leader growled. Send orders to all fleets. Earth is to be found and destroyed. Total annihilation. I want every human world burned to ash. But issuing the order was easier than executing it. Earth's location was known, but getting to it now meant crossing territory that humans controlled. The supply lines to several Vrellan fleets had been cut. Communication relays had been destroyed. The empire that had seemed so strong was suddenly showing cracks. Captain Hyunwoo stood in the observation deck of the Retribution, looking at the stars. His tactical officer, a young woman named Hana, approached quietly. Sir, we just received word. 8 more species have asked to open diplomatic channels with Earth. 4 of them are offering military alliance. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Fear and respect. That's what gets their attention. Is that what we want? To be feared? I want to be left alone, Hyunwoo said quietly. I want my wife and daughter back. But since I can't have that, I'll settle for making sure no one ever attacks Earth again. Lieutenant Yunbi walked past, heading to the pilot ready room. She was laughing with her squadron mates, celebrating their victory. They were young, full of life, treating this like a game they were winning. Hyunwoo remembered being that young once. Before Mars, before the weight of command, before he had killed thousands of Vrellan with a few simple orders. How many died on that fortress? He asked Hana. She checked her tablet. Estimated 10,000 Vrellan. Most were military cadets and instructors. 10,000 lives. It was less than Mars, but it was still 10,000 beings who would never go home. Hyunwoo pushed the thought away. He had to. Because this was just the beginning. On Earth, Dr. Unipark watched the celebration broadcasts with mixed feelings. The world was rejoicing. Humanity had struck back. They had shown the galaxy their strength. But all she could think about was the cycle they were starting. Violence met with violence. Death answered with death. Where would it end? She didn't have an answer, and that terrified her more than the Vrellan ever had. The unprovoked strike captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Harmony, watching the stars blur past the viewport. His hands rested behind his back in a practiced military stance, though there was nothing military about this mission. This was supposed to be peaceful. This was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. We're approaching Axiom Prime, Captain, the navigation officer announced. Hyunwoo nodded, his dark eyes reflecting the distant lights of the massive space station ahead. It looked like a small moon, spinning slowly in the void, home to representatives from 47 different alien species. Dr. Unipark stepped beside him, her tablet clutched to her chest. She had been studying alien biology for 3 years, ever since first contact. Her excitement was barely contained. I still can't believe we're actually doing this. 3 years ago we thought we were alone. Now we're joining a galactic community. If they accept us, Hyunwoo reminded her gently. The station grew larger as they approached. Its surface was covered in docking ports, each one designed for different species with different needs. Some breathed oxygen like humans, others needed methane or lived in liquid environments. The diversity of life in the galaxy still amazed Hyunwoo, even after dozens of briefings. Ambassador Minho Lee entered the bridge, adjusting his formal diplomatic robes. He was an older man with gray at his temples and a calm demeanor that had served Earth well in countless negotiations. Status? Docking in 15 minutes, Ambassador, Hyunwoo replied. All crew members are prepared. Security teams are in position, though I doubt we'll need them. Minho smiled. Let's hope you're right, Captain. The docking procedure went smoothly. As the airlock cycled open, Hyunwoo led a small delegation into the station. The corridor beyond was vast, built to accommodate species of all sizes. A creature that looked like a walking tree passed them, its bark-like skin rustling. 2 floating beings made of what seemed like living gas drifted overhead. Their escort was a Talvirian, a species known for their diplomatic skills. She had 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. Welcome to Axiom Prime, she said in perfect English, translated by the device on her collar. The council is eager to meet you. The council chamber was enormous. 47 different species sat in tiered seating that rose up in a circle. At the center was a platform where the human delegation now stood. Hyunwoo felt the weight of countless eyes on them. Some looked curious. Others looked indifferent. A few looked actively hostile. Ambassador Minho stepped forward and began his speech. He spoke of Earth's desire for peace, of humanity's wish to learn and contribute to galactic society. He talked about human culture, art, and science. Hyunwoo watched the faces of the council members, trying to gauge their reactions. Most seemed polite but uninterested. This was routine for them, but one group in particular caught Hyunwoo's attention. The Vrellan delegation sat in the highest tier, looking down at the humans with obvious contempt. They were large beings, heavily muscled, with skin like gray stone and eyes that glowed faintly red. Their empire was known throughout the galaxy as a military power. The Vrellan representative stood abruptly, interrupting Minho mid-sentence. Why are we wasting time on these primitives? His voice was deep and harsh, translated into booming tones that echoed through the chamber. They have barely left their own solar system. They have no significant military power, no advanced technology. They are children playing at being adults. Minho remained calm. We may be young in galactic terms, but we are eager to learn and contribute. The Vrellan laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. Contribute? What could you possibly offer us? You are nothing. The session continued for hours. Despite the Vrellan's objections, the vote to grant humanity observer status passed. It wasn't full membership, but it was a start. Hyunwoo should have felt proud. Instead, he felt uneasy. The Vrellan's hostility had been too intense, too personal. 3 days later, as the Harmony prepared to depart, Hyunwoo's unease proved justified. The communication came through on all channels simultaneously. Admiral Taeyang's face appeared on the screen, his expression grave. Behind him, Hyunwoo could see the command center in chaos, officers running between stations. Captain Hyunwoo, we have a situation. Mars colony is under attack. Multiple Vrellan warships appeared without warning. They're bombarding the surface. Time seemed to stop. Hyunwoo's wife was on Mars, his daughter. They had moved there 2 years ago when she got her dream job at the terraforming research facility. Get me a channel to Mars colony, he shouted. The communications officer worked frantically. I'm trying, sir. The signals are jammed. I'm getting... Wait, there's something. A video feed appeared. It was shaky, clearly from someone's personal device. Hyunwoo saw the familiar red landscape of Mars, the protective domes that housed 15,000 colonists. Then he saw fire. Beams of energy rained down from the sky, punching through the domes like paper. Atmosphere vented into the thin Martian air. People were running, screaming. The video cut out. Get them back. Hyunwoo gripped the console until his knuckles turned white. I can't, sir. The colony. All signals have stopped. Dr. Yuna stood frozen beside him, tears streaming down her face. Her parents had been on Mars too. Ambassador Minho immediately requested an emergency council session. The Talvarian escort looked genuinely sympathetic, but explained that the council would need time to review the situation. The emergency session convened 8 hours later. 8 hours while Mars burned. By the time the human delegation stood before the council again, it was over. 15,000 people dead. The colony was a crater. "We demand justice," Minho said, his usual calm replaced by barely controlled rage. The Vrelin attacked without provocation, without warning. "This is an act of genocide," the council members murmured among themselves. The Vrelin representative stood completely unbothered. "We were conducting military exercises in our territory. If the humans chose to place their colony in our operational zone, that is their mistake. Mars is in our solar system." Hyunwoo shouted from behind Minho. "How is that your territory?" "The strong decide what is theirs," the Vrelin said simply. "The weak suffer. This is the way of the galaxy." The council voted. The result was devastating. 40 species abstained. 5 voted to investigate. 2 voted in support of the Vrelin. Not a single species voted to sanction or punish them. The council's official statement was brief and cold. "The Galactic Council offers its condolences to humanity for this unfortunate incident. However, we cannot interfere in the internal affairs of member species. The Vrelin Empire has acted within the bounds of established galactic law." Ambassador Minho stood silent for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly, but his words carried through the chamber. "We came to you seeking peace and friendship. We came believing that civilization meant something, that justice meant something. We were wrong." The human delegation was escorted back to the Harmony. As they departed Axiom Prime, a final message arrived from the Vrelin Empire. It was simple and brutal. "Submit to Vrelin authority and pay tribute, or share the fate of your Mars colony. You have 30 days to decide." Hyunwoo stood on the bridge watching the station shrink behind them. Dr. Yuna sat at a console, quietly sobbing. Ambassador Minho stared at nothing, his face carved from stone. The ship's journey back to Earth took 5 days. 5 days of silence. 5 days of grief turning slowly into something harder, something colder. When they finally reached Earth orbit, Admiral Taeyang was waiting for them with a message that would change everything. "The Vrelin think we're weak," the Admiral said. "The galaxy thinks we're irrelevant. It's time we showed them what humans are really capable of. It's time they learned what happens when you provoke Earth." A choice that no Vrelin Emperor had ever made in their entire history. He opened a communication. The cost of vengeance. The Vrelin Emperor's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere under heavy escort. It was unprecedented. Never in 300 years of Vrelin dominance had their leader traveled to another species' homeworld. But the Battle of Crimson Nebula had changed everything. Admiral Taeyang watched the landing from his command center. Beside him, Captain Hyunwoo stood with his arms crossed, his face unreadable. The man who had lost everything on Mars. The man who had led the strikes that brought the Vrelin to their knees. "How does it feel?" Taeyang asked quietly. "Victory." Hyunwoo was silent for a long moment. "It doesn't bring them back," he finally said. "Nothing will bring them back." The negotiations began the next day. The Vrelin Emperor, a massive creature with scars from a dozen wars, sat across from Earth's representatives. His delegation had asked for the talks to be private. Earth had insisted they be broadcast across the entire galaxy. Ambassador Minho led Earth's negotiating team. "Let us be clear about terms. The Vrelin Empire will withdraw from all occupied territories. You will pay reparations to every species you have wronged. Your military will be reduced to defensive forces only." The Emperor's eyes burned with suppressed rage, but he nodded. "And in return?" "In return, Earth will not reduce your homeworld to rubble. You will be allowed to exist. Your species will survive." It was harsh. It was brutal. But after Mars, after 15,000 dead, no one on Earth was in a forgiving mood. Dr. Yuna Park watched the negotiations from the observation room. Beside her sat several other scientists and diplomats who had argued for more moderate terms. She felt sick watching it. Yes, the Vrelin had done terrible things. Yes, they deserved punishment, but this felt like they were becoming the very thing they had fought against. "This is wrong," she said quietly to her colleague. "We're not liberators anymore. We're conquerors." "The Vrelin would have done worse to us," her colleague replied, "so we become like them? That's our answer?" She left the observation room and went for a walk through the compound. Outside, she passed groups of soldiers celebrating. Earth's military had grown from a scattered defense force to a formidable war machine in just 2 months. Young men and women in uniform, confident in their power. One of them was Private Kangmin Shin, a 20-year-old who had joined up the day after Mars. He was laughing with his squad mates, showing them pictures from his recent deployment. Yuna recognized the images and stopped. Where was that taken? Kangmin looked up surprised. Oh, that's from the occupation of Hexar 7, ma'am. Vrellan colony world we took last week. The images showed Vrellan civilians on their knees, their homes burning in the background. Human soldiers standing over them with weapons. What happened there? Yuna asked, her voice tight. Kangmin's smile faded. Just securing the area. They were harboring Vrellan military personnel. Were they? Yuna pointed at an image showing children. Were those children harboring soldiers? The young soldier looked away. The sergeant said, He said they're all the enemy, ma'am. After what they did to Mars, Yuna felt cold. She took the images and went directly to Admiral Taeyang's office. She found him with Captain Hyunwoo, reviewing military reports. We need to talk about what's happening in the occupied territories, she said without preamble. She showed them the images. This is from Hexar 7, but I've heard similar reports from 3 other worlds. Our soldiers are committing atrocities. Taeyang studied the images, his face grave. I'll have these soldiers court-martialed. It's not just these soldiers, Yuna insisted. It's becoming systematic. We're so focused on revenge that we're losing sight of who we are. Captain Hyunwoo looked at the images and felt something twist inside him. He had been so focused on hurting the Vrellan, on making them pay for Mars, that he hadn't thought about what that meant on the ground level. She's right, he said quietly. This isn't what we're fighting for. But changing course proved harder than expected. The human population was riding a wave of triumph. Earth had gone from victim to victor in a matter of months. The whole world felt powerful for the first time since first contact. No one wanted to hear about restraint or mercy. Suyeon Baek, a war correspondent, had been embedded with human forces throughout the campaign. She had filmed the victories, the celebrations, the glory of humanity's revenge. But she had also filmed what came after. Her latest broadcast showed a Vrellan civilian area on an occupied world. Families hiding in their homes. Children crying. Human soldiers kicking down doors. It was raw, uncomfortable, and it went viral on Earth. The reaction was immediate and divided. Half the population was outraged at the soldiers' behavior. The other half was outraged at Suyeon for showing it. They killed Mars, one angry message read. They deserve whatever they get. This makes us no better than them, another argued. We're supposed to be better than this. On Vrellan Prime in the Imperial Palace, a group of Vrellan military commanders met in secret. They were not loyal to the Emperor, who they saw as weak for negotiating. They wanted to continue the war, to restore Vrellan pride. But they were not the only Vrellan who opposed the war. A younger generation who had grown up hearing about the Empire's glory but had now seen its defeat began asking questions. Why had they attacked Mars? What had humanity done to deserve it? Had their leaders been wrong? A Vrellan scholar named Torvin published an essay that spread through their networks. It was titled The Cost of Arrogance. In it, he argued that the Vrellan had brought this disaster on themselves, that they had grown so drunk on power that they forgot other species could think, feel, and fight. The essay was controversial, but it found an audience, particularly among Vrellan who had lost family in the Battle of Crimson Nebula. Dr. Yuna read a translated copy of the essay and felt hope for the first time in weeks. She reached out to Torvin through diplomatic channels. They began a correspondence. Tentative at first, then more open. Not all Vrellan supported the attack on Mars, Torvin wrote. Many of us argued against expansion, against aggression. But we were ignored. Our government became a military dictatorship, and we were powerless to stop it. Yuna shared this with Captain Hyunwoo. He read it skeptically. They stood by while their government murdered 15,000 people. Just like some of our soldiers are committing atrocities while most of us stand by, Yuna countered. We're not so different. Hyunwoo wanted to argue, but he couldn't. He thought about Private Kangmin and his squad. They were good soldiers. They had joined to protect Earth. But somewhere along the way, they had started to enjoy the power. To enjoy the revenge, he requested a meeting with Admiral Taeyang and Ambassador Minho. When they convened, Hyunwoo spoke carefully. We're at a crossroads. We can continue down this path of vengeance and become what we fought against, or we can choose something harder. We can choose to be better. What are you suggesting? Taeyang asked. That we offer real peace. Not the peace of a boot on their neck, but actual coexistence. The Vrelin who ordered the attack on Mars should face justice, but not their entire species. Not their children. Ambassador Minho leaned back. The public won't accept that. They want blood. Then we need to lead them to a better place, Yunwu said. Isn't that what leaders are supposed to do? The debate raged through Earth's government. Some argued for complete victory, for reducing the Vrelin to irrelevance. Others argued for reconciliation, for showing the galaxy that humanity could be strong and merciful. In the occupied territories, Colonel So-Min implemented strict new rules of engagement. Soldiers caught abusing civilians would face immediate court-martial. The military would protect civilians, not terrorize them. Some soldiers grumbled. Others were relieved. Private Kangman, confronted with what he had done, broke down and requested transfer to humanitarian aid operations. I joined to protect people, he told his commanding officer through tears. When did I become the thing I was supposed to protect them from? Dr. Yuna continued her correspondence with Torvin. They began discussing what a real peace might look like, how to address past wrongs while building a future that didn't require vengeance. There must be justice for Mars, Torvin wrote. The leaders who ordered that attack must face consequences. But punishing my children for what my leaders did, that only creates the next war. Yuna shared these conversations publicly. They were controversial, but they started to shift the conversation. Slowly, more people began asking what comes after revenge. When do we stop? How do we become more than our anger? Captain Hyun Woo visited the Mars Memorial, rebuilt on the site where his family had lived. He stood before the wall of names, finding his wives and daughters among the 15,000. I've killed thousands in your name, he said quietly. I thought it would make the pain less. It doesn't, nothing does. Behind him, Dr. Yuna approached. She had lost her parents on Mars too. They stood together in silence for a long time. What would they want? Yuna finally asked. Your wife, your daughter, my parents. Would they want us to become murderers to avenge them? Hyunwoo thought about his daughter. She had been 6 years old. She had loved animals, especially the rabbits they were trying to breed on Mars. She had been gentle and kind. No, he said. She would want me to be better than this. Then Lao,